Hi, everybody. I hope you had a good weekend. Now we're going to start doing the OTP. Last week was quite an interesting week, pretty much with regards to the situation in Greece and what's happening in the euro. Greece was supposed to be making a payment on Friday of 300 million euros to the IMF, and its total payment this month of June is about 1.6 billion euros. There has been a great deal of discussion that Greece was going to pay, and even on Friday morning, Christine Lagarde, the president of the IMF, went on a press conference which was one of a kind, where it actually asked the Federal Reserve Bank of the states not to raise interest rate or to slow down the interest rate and to wait for more data, because it fears that raising the interest rate would affect the growth of the European market and will slow down the exit from the recession, the European recession. And in that press conference, she has stated that she had full confidence that Greece is going to make the 300 million euro payment. What happened is Greece invoked a clause in the agreements all the borrowing countries have from the IMF, which allows them to bundle all their payments during one certain month to the end of the month. That means if Greece had 3 payments to make during the month of June, according to this agreement, the contract, it has the right to let's say bundle or postpone the payment it's supposed to do until the end of the month. Technically, it is not a default because it's part of the agreement that Greece would extend or bundle its payment. But from a general perspective of the market, I mean, legally it is not in default. But from the point of view of perception, it does look like Greece has stopped payment and used that clause as an excuse not to pay. Also, what happened on Friday, we had a fantastic employment numbers coming out of the States. I think the US market has created a much larger number of jobs than was anticipated. They were expecting that the United States would create 222,000. The actual number was 280,000. So keep in the back of your mind what happened with Greece, and then we're talking about the employment number, the fantastic employment number, which is 25% or about 60,000 more jobs than was expected. We come to another big surprise that happened on Friday, which was Canada. The employment change in Canada, which is the number of jobs that the Canadian economy has produced. They were expecting that Canada would produce 10,000 jobs. What happened, it actually produced, as you can see here, 58,000 jobs. This is an unbelievable number because, again, maybe you've heard me mention that before, but the Canadian economy is about 1/10, or the population, the Canadian population is about 1/10 of the American population. And if the United States have produced 280,000, this means that Canada should produce about 2.8 million jobs. If you look at this number, you multiply that by 10 to bring into the ratio between the Canadian and the US market. This shows that the Canadian economy has produced, or as if the United States has produced 589,000 jobs, which is tremendous. It's pretty ridiculous. If you look at the chart of the Canadian employment, you would see that it's extremely erratic. I mean, 1 month it's negative, the next month is positive, the next month is negative and positive. It's extremely erratic, and the numbers that's been coming out of Bay Street with regards to Canada have been extremely erratic, and you cannot, looking at this chart from 2008 till now, you cannot see a trend of the employment or a trend for the unemployment. Conversely, if you look at the employment in the United States, you can see that you have a trend. I mean, it began to create jobs from 2011, and it's began proceeding that you can see that the economy is pretty much healthy, and there is a trend that the US economy is creating jobs, and you can take these numbers as a representation of the state of affairs of the US economy. If we go back to the Canadian, it's 1 month up and down, that is completely erratic, and you really have to take these numbers coming out of Canada with a major grain of salt. I mean, it's not. So with that, we can see that the US economy is healthy. We had I would call this a fluke in the Canadian number. And of course, we had the bad news coming out of the Eurozone. With that said, it's very important for us to focus on the euro and to see how the euro has reacted to this number, and what does the market see with regards to the euro, because it's going to be a major market mover during the next week. We also have the G7, which is started today, and I think it will continue up till tomorrow. And of course, Greece is on the agenda, and it's probably they will all be discussing the Greek situation and what to do. That said, they do want to keep Greece in the fold of the euro. Greece is playing a serious game here, and from my perspective, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, absolutely wrong. But I was looking at the numbers last week, and the total debt of Greece, I mean, Greece wants to sign up with the IMF, and they are supposed to release for it 7.2 billion euros. But out of those 7.2, it is going to give back to the IMF 1.7. But in July and in August, it has about 14 billion euros that it's supposed to pay. It owes about 14 billion euros to pay, and they're going to get 7, out of which 1.3 or 1.4 is going back to the IMF. So they're using one credit card to pay the other credit card. So out of the 7 billion, let's say 2 is going to evaporate. This leaves 5, and they have a total of 12 they have to pay. So I don't know how they're going to do it or what is the situation. So it doesn't look good, but it's fascinating and it's confusing, and we just have to be on our toes, specifically with the euro, because the euro charts speaks volumes. Again, I'm not telling you which way it's going to go because I really don't know. But look at this here on Friday. I mean, we had this major sell-off. It broke below 2 structure points, and then it reversed and it came back above the 2 structure points. If you look at the euro dollar, the same exact chart, it broke below the 2 structure points and it reversed. I mean, technically this looks like a buy signal because it's coming, it traded below the 110.51 and then below the 110.97, and now it's trading at 111. So it seems that there is some sort of buying coming into the euro, or they're not that scared. I have this, to me, technically, if we are not going to think, this is a buy. If you look at the euro New Zealand, this is another chart which is extremely interesting. After the number, it kind of crashed and then it reversed back above the structure point. And keep in mind that the New Zealand is a currency that pays 3.5%. So there is something in the euro that it's still being bid. They are buying it, and again, we don't care why. We are to do or die, and this is what the chart is showing us, and we have to respect that. We're not going to say I think, or I mean, we trade what we see, not really what we think. With that said, I just wanted to show you that, and if you look, for example, at the euro Oz, pretty much the same kind of story with the euro Oz coming back above the structures even after it's selling off. So they do want to buy it. The only one that really sold off on Friday was the euro CAD, the CAD. I mean, all the CAD pairs really flew because of the good numbers that came out of Canada. So I think the data is, so we're just going to give it some time. I don't know what they're, anyway, so looking at the indices, as we usually do, I mean, here is the CAD. This is the absolute sell-off, and this is simply CAD strength. I mean, people that were short the CAD, once they saw this number, they started just reversing their positions, and we have this capitulation. This move was in the Euro CAD. It was in the Pound CAD, as you can see. And it was also in the New Zealand CAD. I mean, the CAD just turned around and flew. So again, it gives us a good chance to take the reversal trade when it comes to the Canadian. We will be going in the same direction as, i.e. buying the CAD and selling the other pairs, but we'll also be able to identify turning points. So for example, in the New Zealand CAD, if it goes back above 87, 82, then we'll be looking at buying it because that will be the beginning of a short covering. So we're going to anticipate these points. That said, if we're looking at the currency charts, the indices, you can see that the dollar has strengthened. The euro is still going up, but again, we had a small pullback after the bad news. The yen is continuing its decline. The New Zealand is quite weak. The Aussie is also weak. And the pound is weak a little bit. And the CAD just kind of reversed, but it's kind of we have this congestion that's been going on from the latter part of the May up till today. So we're just going to look at them on my charts. So if we start with the dollar index, the dollar came back above the 96.31. It closed at 96.36. It is a decent close. I would have preferred if it closed a little bit higher, but it's still. So we have a clear path for the dollar. As long as it's above the 96.31, we can buy it. But if it trades back below the 96.36, then this will be a reversal or a move to the downside. So with that, we're going to be looking at buying the US dollar. It's not very strong. The trend is still up. Everything is positive about it. So we'll be looking at buying the US dollar. The next one we're going to look at is the New Zealand, just quickly, because these are the weak ones. So if you look at the New Zealand dollar, you can see that it's, as we have discussed several times, we have a structure failure, several structure failure, and this pretty much is in a bear market. We have next week the Royal Bank of New Zealand is having a meeting, is going to discuss interest rate and their monetary policy. Nothing is expected out of it, but again, they seem to be happy with this weakness, and this should continue to the downside. So we're going to remain negative on the New Zealand. And looking at the Euro New Zealand chart, this is quite telling. So we're going to be negative on the New Zealand, really quite negative. We're going to be negative on the New Zealand dollar. The next one we're going to look is the Australian dollar. Pretty much the same as the New Zealand, but not as weak. So we are going to be looking at shorting the Aussie and shorting the New Zealand. Okay, the next one, we're going to take the Japanese yen. As you can see, we are pretty much at a new low, and we have the G7, as I said, meeting this week. Probably they are going to, they're discussing pretty much what we call now the currency war that's going on. And they're going to give their blessing to what Japan is doing. I doubt if there is going to be any counter or anything different than what is already been taking place. So we're looking for the yen to continue going down. So we're also going to be negative on the yen. The CAD is the interesting one. We are technically in a bear market. This is a bear market on the Canadian, and after the fantastic employment number that came out, the Canadian was unable to trade above the structure point, which is the 850. This tells me that the CAD is weak, and it tells me that the Canadian economy is not doing as well as we expected. It is subject to gold prices. It is subject to crude prices, and this is just a knee-jerk buy that happened. So I would actually be bearish as long as we're below the 80.50. I would be bearish on the CAD only if it gets above the 80.50. So I'm going to be less bearish, but I'm going to be bearish on the Canadian. The important one now is the British pound, and the pound has not yet broken in any one direction. It is still pretty much in the big congestion that you can see here since 2009. It's oscillating between the all-time high and the all-time low in the last 5 years. But the numbers are slightly better out of the UK. It is kind of holding its status, if you will. And all the other currencies, as you can see, are pretty much in well-defined bear markets. So the Canadian's a bear market, the New Zealand and the Australian in a bear market, the Japanese yen is in a bear market. This is not really in a bear market, it is in a congestion. So we're going to be neutral in this case with a positive bias for the pound. So we're going to be, let's say, neutral with a positive bias on the GBP. Last but not least is the Swiss franc. The Swiss, again, is rather expensive. That's not my opinion, it's the opinion of the president or the chairman of the Swiss bank, and he's expecting that the Swiss franc to come down. Again, nobody believes now this guy. They have no trust or confidence in what the SNB says now, but as you can see, it's really going nowhere in a hurry. So we're going to be neutral on it until it breaks out of one of our technical spots. But right now we're going to be expecting a sideways, so we're going to buy the lows and sell the highs. So with this, we're going to be neutral in a way about the Swiss franc. But with a negative bias. Okay, with that said, the way we're going to plan our trades, we're going to first to be looking at the pound. We're looking at buying the pound. Oh yes, the euro. Yes. I thought I did explain the euro. Anyway, the euro. Everything fundamental is negative on the euro. I mean, there's no question about that. But what we have here is we do have our bear market. We don't have a structural failure or anything to the upside. So we are still technically in a bear market. So our general bias is to the downside. But as you can see, there's a couple of things. This little part here, we can consider that a structural failure to the upside. We have a failure to make a low, that's our structural failure, and we broke above it, we came back to test it, and we moved higher. But of course, this is such a magnificent trend to the downside, so it required a little more work before it goes up. So this is, again, it's a structural failure, but it is not a big structural failure that would change the trend. And when I say one of the ways, this is a good lesson for you guys, one of the ways to decide if this is a real big structural failure that's a real genuine trend is that you change the time frame and see if the structural failure appears on the larger time frame. So looking on the weekly, you can see that this is the whole structure here, and again, we trade what we see. So it's size-wise, it looks small. And looking at the last week, we are back above the structure point and above that momentum low here. So all what this says to me is that they don't want to sell this, and they may be fearing that the do you guys hear me well? Hello, can you hear me? Okay, somebody said you can't hear me. All right. All what this says to me right now is that they are fearing that there will be a last-minute agreement with Greece and the ECB, and all these guys that are short are going to begin to cover their shorts. So there is, let's to say the least, there is no new shorts that are coming in. And the existing shorts, or the ones that are late, are beginning to get skeptical against our short. So the bias, we might get a short covering rally. The trend change, we can consider the trend change to be above the 114.71 or the 115. I mean, actually the 114.71 would be, this is a significant point. This here, the 114.71 is a structure point. So this high here, 114.72, that would be a structure point. If the euro gets above that, then we do have a serious trend change to the upside. With that, I wouldn't be rushing to sell the euro right now. Maybe I would sell it against the dollar, but not against everything. So we, with regards to the euro, I'm going to be neutral, let's call it in this case, neutral actually with a positive bias, simply because they are expecting maybe a short covering coming into the euro. So the way we're going to play this is that we're going to be looking at buying the dollar. The New Zealand and the Aussie are easy ones, and the yen. So dollar New Zealand, dollar Aus, dollar yen. We can look at maybe the dollar Swiss, and we can look at the dollar CAD. So these are the ones we're going to be focusing on. The second thing is that we're going to be looking at the pound, and we're going to look at the pound New Zealand, pound Aussie, pound yen. We may at the end see if we can take some pound CAD if we get a reversal, but we're going to stay away from that. And the pound Swiss, we had major sell-off in the pound CAD, so we might get a reversal in it. So we can be looking at the pound New Zealand, pound Aus, pound yen, and we can keep an eye on the euro pound from the short side. But we're taking the dollar against all the currencies and the pound. We can also look, if you wanted, maybe the euro yen. We can maybe look at the euro New Zealand and maybe the euro Aus. So dollar yen, dollar New Zealand, dollar Aussie. Then we come to the dollar CAD and the dollar Swiss. We're going to take the pound yen, pound New Zealand, pound Oz, and we're going to identify a reversal point in the pound CAD. We're going also to look at the euro yen, euro New Zealand, and the euro Oz, and we're going to see a reversal point on the euro CAD. Okay, this is the plan, and let's now get started. So we're going to start with the dollar yen. This will be our first currency. And as you can see here, after the unemployment number, the pound, the dollar yen flew, and it's now above the 124.90, which is a pretty significant point we identified last week, which is this area over here, and we closed at 125.56, so we should be looking for this to continue higher. Out of this whole stuff, I think the next reasonable target would be the 135.13. We do have a momentum high here, which is the 127.03. So that is the next one. Okay, so we want to be buying the dollar yen. Now, anywhere we can buy the dollar yen. I mean, we can get a small pullback. You can buy it in this afternoon if it opens, or worst case scenario, you're going to buy it above the high of the day, which is 125.80. So we're going to buy it above 125.80 and give it a decent stop so you can stay with it. The next structure is the 127.03. And our stop, I will put the stop below 125. I will actually put it below the 124.90. Because again, you can buy it earlier this evening, you can buy it at any time, but if you're late, you buy it above the 125.80. And we have to use the correct stop of 124.90. On the short side, the only thing we can do is that we can take it below the structure point, which is the 124.13. It's not really, I mean, we can take it below the 124.13 as a short if need be, which is right there. This is the 124.15, and as you can see, it actually worked very nicely this last week. It oscillated on either side of the 124.15, and then it flew higher. So this is, again, we will take it below the 124.13. So we're shorting the dollar yen below the 124.13, which is our structure short point and our stop. So we're buying above 125.80, the structure 127.03, the stop 124.90. We're going short below the 124.13 structure point. That is the dollar yen. The next one we're going to do is the Aussie dollar. The plan last week was to go short below 176.28, so that's technically has just started right now. But you can see from the chart, it's really, really weak. And if it takes this low here, which is the 75.97, that will be like a minor structural failure to the downside. The big structure is this one here, which is the 75.32. So we're going to go short below the low of the day, which is 75.82. Sorry, it's 75.98. The structure is the 75.32 remains the same, and if it breaks that, you want to stay with that position. And we're going, and the Aussie, the New Zealand, the yen, they are all long-term trades. They are all long-term trades. And we're going to use the structure point as our stop, which is the 76.73 as our stop, because we're going to give it some room to work. On the long side, I really would not even consider going long. As you can see, it went above it and it failed, so there is no reason for us to go long unless it goes above the 77.50. You want to stay on the short side. The structural long point is the 77.99. And if you buy it 77.50, you're going to use 77.20 as a stop. You're not going to give it too much room because the trend is down. So we're buying above 77.50. The structure is 77.99. And my stop is 77.20. The trend and the bias is to the downside. We're going to go short below 78.95. The structure is 75.32. No, sorry, I made a mistake. It's 75.98. Dyslexia working. We're going to go short below 75.98. The structure 75.32 and the stop is 76.73. These are long-term trades and you want to let them work. Okay, that is the Aussie dollar. The next one is the New Zealand dollar. This is weaker than the Aussie. I mean, this is, so far the New Zealand is the weakest of them all. So we definitely want to take it short. I want to see what's the structure point below that. The next one is the 69.70. Oops. So we're going to go short, let's say below the 70.40. The structure remains the same, the 69.70 remains the same, the structural short point. And the stop is going to be the 71.02, the one daily low. On the long side, I wouldn't touch it unless it goes above the structure point, which is the 71.75. This is going to be our long point, our structure long point, and our stop. So we're buying above the structure, the 71.75. That is going to be our structure point. And on the short side, we're going to go short below, let's say, the intraday close, which is the 70.40. The structure short point is the 69.70, and my stop is the 71.02. Okay, that is the New Zealand dollar. The next one we're going to do is the dollar CAD. Now, as you can see, we are in an uptrend. I mean, technically, we're in an uptrend. This is just the reaction of the employment. We did not break below the structure point, so my bias for the dollar CAD is actually still to the upside. So we will short the dollar CAD only below the 124.90. This is going to be our short point, our structural short, and our short stop. On the long side, again, we can leave this to the end. I mean, as you can see, the trend is up and the high probability direction is to the upside. So we can buy it above this high of the day, which is 125.08. So we can buy it above 125.08. And the next structure is the 126.63. And if I buy it above 125.08, I can use the 124.35 as my stop. So we're buying above 125.08. The next structure up is 126.63, and my stop is 124.35. On the short side, I will only go short below the structure point, which is the 124.09. That's the dollar CAD. The next one we're going to do, we're going to take the pound pairs and the yen pairs so that we can. So we're going to take the pound yen. As you can see, this is, again, we are pretty much, the trend is quite clear with regards to the dollar yen, to the pound yen. And the next structure is 192.59. If you look at the weekly chart, I mean, it does look pretty much profound. So we want to be buyers of the pound yen, and you want to hold it. This is a long-term trade. So I think this is like the end of 2012 when we had the trend in the yen pairs, and we stayed with it and gave it a breathing room. So the dollar yen, the pound yen, and then we're going to see the euro yen. So if you don't have the pound yen, you can take it above 191.90, which is 15 pips away. The next structure is the 192.58, and our stop is going to be again, if you're day trading and using short, I mean, I will use the 190.80, 190.69 as the stop. If you're taking it long term, just grind your teeth and hang on to it. On the short side, I will only go short below 196.68. I mean, I'm not going to waste your time and my time with it. So we're only going to go short below 189.69. Okay. So we're buying about 190.90. The next structure is 192.58, and the stop is going to be 190.69. On the short side, we're going to go short below the structure point, which is 189.69. That is the pound yen. The next one we're going to do with the rest of the pound pairs, we're going to take the pound Aussie. This is the weekly chart of the pound Aussie, and as you can see, again, pretty much we had the reverse of the trend, we had the structure point, and now we're closing near the high of the day, so definitely we want to be buyers of the pound Aussie. And the next structure is 2.25, okay. Yeah, we have. So we can buy it above the high of the 5-day, which is 2.0055. The next structure is 2.0254, and the stop we're going to use the 1.9908. On the short side, again, we're going to go short below 196 structure point. All this, as you can see, all those sell-offs, so we're going to go short below 196. It's a long way away, but we have a bona fide trend to the upside. This is going to be our structure short and our stop. Okay, that is the pound Aussie. We're buying above 2.0055. The next structure is 2.0254, and my stop is 1908. And on the short side, we're going short only below the structure point, which is 1.9687. Okay, that is the pound Oz. The next one is the pound New Zealand. Pretty much the same story. We do have, as I showed you last week, the 2.1054. This is a triple structure failure to the upside, so we do have a bona fide trend and you want to stay with it. The next one is 2.25, so these are the clear trends and you don't want to nickel and dime them. So we closed at 2.166. The high is 2.17, which is about 35 pips away. So if you don't have it, then this would be the buy. The next structure remains the same, the 2.25, and your stop is going to be 2.16. On the short side, you can see the volatility of this thing. It's a volatile stuff. So if you're not going to give it the big room for a stop, don't trade it. So I wouldn't go short. I mean, there is no reason to go short below 2.13, which is this low here. So my short is going to be 2.13. And the structure short point remains the same, 2.10545. And my stop, even if I go short here, I'm not going to give it too much room. I'm going to use the 2.14. It's about 100 pips on the trade for my short position. Okay, that is the pound New Zealand. Now we're going to look at the pound dollar. I want to show you something in the pound dollar. If you see the chart for the pound dollar on Friday, after the excellent employment number in the US, we sold off below those two structure points, and then we came back above it. So this is a sign that this thing wants to go up. So on the short, I will only go short below the low of the day, or below that structure point, which is the 152.32. And the next structure point would be this low, which is 151.69. And my stop, if I go short below the 152.32, my stop is going to be right there above the closing of this bar, which is 152.80. I would rather be looking to go long, so I will buy above 153. The next structure is the 154.969. So my bias is to the upside. I would like to buy it above 153. The structure is 154.969, and my stop is going to be the 152.32. On the short side, I will go short below the 152.32. The structure is 151.69, and my stop is 152.80. That is the pound dollar. Guys, we're at the top of the hour. It's 6:53. So let's take a 7-minute break, get a cup of coffee or something, and we'll come back at the top of the hour. Okay, so we'll come back at 7 o'clock and we'll continue with the rest of the stuff. I'll see you in 7 minutes. Okay, we did the pound yen and the dollar yen. Now the next one, you can see that it's actually moving higher, is the CAD yen, and this one pretty much a reaction to the number. But what's more important is the structure point is 99.80, and this is par, which means 1 Canadian is equal to 100, and this is quite an explosive move, and that is also a major trend up. The CAD has a tendency, that's why they call it the loonie, it's very volatile. So we trade what we see, we want to buy. The structure is 101.04. So we will buy it above the structure 104, but you're going to keep a tight stop. You're going to make sure that it doesn't come back below that structure. Even if it comes back, get out, and then if it goes back above it, buy it again. So we're going to buy this above the structure, which is the 101.04. and we're going to keep a tight stop. Just it's a volatility stop. It's not that the trend is going to change, or it's just a volatility stop. On the short side, we're only going to go short below this other structure, which is 99.80. So we're buying above a structure point and we're selling below another structure point. Okay, so we're buying above 101.04 and we're going short below the 99.80. That is the CAD yen. We also have, as you can see, the Aussie yen is coming down, so we're going to stay away from that, because if you buy one yen and you short the other, then you're upside down with the Aussie yen and the New Zealand. So we can look at the Euro yen. The Euro yen is very interesting. Again, it's kind of changing up. The euro is weak and all that kind of stuff. But as you can see here on Friday, this is a brilliant, a nice, easy trading setup. We have a structure point 139.95 and another structure point of 139 even. So we have two structure points, so this makes our trade easy. So we will buy above one structure point and we're going to sell below the other structure point. So we're going to buy above 139. And we're going to sell below the 139 spot 016. So we're buying above 139.95, which is our structure long point and our stop, and we're going to go short below the 139 spot 016. That is the euro yen. What else we can do? We did the euro Aussie or not yet? Okay, we will do the euro Aussie and the euro New Zealand, and pretty much that covers them all. As you see, the euro New Zealand here, after this move up, you would expect that when the bad news comes out of the euro New Zealand, that we would get an exit of the from the euro New Zealand and they would sell it. But this says that there is no exit. I mean, they're not that particularly scared, so the high probability trade is for it to continue higher. So on the short side, if it goes below the low of the day, then which is 156.76, then we're going to sell it. And the structure short point would be the 156.270. Okay, and our stop is going to be pretty much the high of the day, which is 155.80. On the long side, I would buy it above the 158.50. It's a mistake, 158.50. I will buy it above 158.50. The next structure long point is 159.08. And okay, we'll buy 158.50. The stop is going to be 156.50. And the next structure is the 159. So we're buying above 158.50. The structure is 159.08, and my stop is 156.50. On the short side, we're going to go short below 156.76. The structure short point is 156.27, and my stop is 158.50. Last but not least would be the Euro Oz, and we can do the Euro Dollar too. Again, it's the same thing. It broke below the structure and it came back above the structure. So on the short side, it's easy. We'll go short below 144.77. The structure short point is 144.44. Okay, and my stop is going to be the above the structure point, which is 145.91. On the long side, I want to buy it above 146.20. The next structure to the upside is 147.047, and my stop would be the one for so I'm buying it above 146.20. The next structure is 147.04, and my stop is going to be 145. On the short side, I'm going short below 144.47, which is the 3 daily high, and the structure short point is the 144.49, and my stop is going to be the 145.91. Okay, that is the Euro New Zealand. If you don't want to trade the Euro New Zealand and the Euro Aussie and you want to look at the Euro Dollar, I mean, the trend is down and we want to short down, but this, you can go short below the structure point or the low of the day, which is 110.48. So we're going to go short below the structure point, which is 110.48 or 51, let's say, which is the structure point. This is going to be our short point, our structure short, and our short stop. On the long, which again we might get some short covering rally, we can buy it above the 112.22. and the next structure point is the 113,914, and this is where I'm going to buy it. I'm going to use a tight stop of 111.50 as my stop. Okay, that is the euro dollar, and with this we pretty much covered everything unless one of you wants something in specific that I have not done. This is pretty much what we need to focus on this week, and unless any of you wants a specific pair, we'll pretty much have our plan, and I will see you tomorrow in the room. Okay? Anybody needs anything in particular, or we're cool? Okay, with that, we are going to call it a day. Have a great evening, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care, guys. Okay, guys, bye. I'm closing the room.